Stephen Speak, a podcast about everything and nothing. Don't forget to subscribe. Thought I'd sing along that time. Hello, welcome to episode 12. I'm quite energetic today. I don't know why, because it's really, really hot. We're on the weekend where we're going to have this massive heat wave, so it's really lovely being in my bedroom. Sweating, basically. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm sweating. Britain has humid weather when it gets hot. We don't just have, dry heat. We have stupid humidity, so it takes all the joy out of the heat. I don't mind heat. I don't like humidity. It's terrible. Anyway, that's not what the episode's about. I could moan about the weather. I'm British. It gets too hot, we moan. It gets too cold, we moan. We can't cope with it. Anyway, it's not about that. This week, I'll be mostly talking about my mother. Episode 4 was about my dad, and I've left it till episode 12 to talk about my mother. That's no reflection on her. She's ace. I just didn't want to do a back-to-back mum and dad episode, so I wanted to tease you all a little bit. So my mum, she is Irish. Northern Irish. She was born in Belfast, and she now resides there again after living in England. So you may realise that I have an English accent, but there's a reason for that. It's because she lived in England for a long time, and when my mother and father got divorced, she decided to move back to her place of birth, which is good for me because I get to go and have a little break every so often, and I love Northern Ireland. I would live there in a second if I could. Same with my wife; she would definitely move over there with me, which is good because it'd be a terrible commute and would make sexual relations very difficult. Anyway, golf on one. Standard Steve. So basically, my mum and dad met. He was in the army, serving over in Belfast, obviously because of the stuff that goes on over in Ireland, or historically has, and still does, unfortunately, to a certain degree. So, so she fell in love with my dad. My dad fell in love with her. It was a bit of a whirlwind kind of affair, and I didn't realise until I got with my girlfriend, my now wife, Sarah, that my dad proposed just as quick as I did. I didn't realise that, so it's kind of nice. Hopefully my marriage doesn't end up in divorce, but, we'll try and work on that. That's a separate issue. But yeah, obviously, we don't want any marriage to end up in divorce. It was a hard time when that happened, because, I think everyone thinks that their parents are, solid, and that's not going to happen, but, so my mum moved back to Ireland. It was a difficult time for her and for me and my brother. I had to move out and get my own place. My brother was already living away from home, so it didn't really affect him in that sense, but he wasn't also living with it, so I think he was kind of disconnected from that. So, but now she lives back in Northern Ireland. This episode's not about divorce. And my mum's epic. She is a little odd, a little annoying, hilarious, without really meaning to be. And I'm probably more similar to her than I would like to admit. I must admit, I very much have traits from my dad, and very much traits from my mum. And I think me and my brother are complete opposites. I think the stuff he gets from my dad, I get from my mum, and the stuff that he gets from my mum, I get from my dad. I would like to think that I'm the more balanced person, but I don't think I am. I think he gets good things from my mum that I probably need to work on, and vice versa. And as I say, I wanted to go in the army, and my dad was in the army, and my brothers kind of worked in more caring professions, and my mum's worked in more caring professions. So there's one thing where we're a little bit different. And she obviously moved over here with my dad. He was in the army, and they got together, and she moved over here. He was based in Aldershot as a para, and so they got together and they got married, and I'm the result of that. I'm my brother, obviously, and as a parent, my mum is probably one of the best people not just parent. She's one of the best people to know. She's so giving to the point of detriment to her own self. She will literally do backflips and somersaults and jump off the mountain for you. She's the best sort of person, but she needs to look after herself more. If you listen to this, Mum, do more things for yourself. And that's one thing that where we're very similar. I'm very much the same as her in that sense. I think we both get that. Must do more for others, forget about yourself. But she did a lot of stuff around the house. You know, my dad was kind of like the breadwinner. But my dad's never been great at like money stuff, and he's not terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's an arsehole, but my mum used to manage like the finances of the house, like manage what was going on. He pretty much worked and looked after the garden and did manly things, and she pretty much did everything else. You know, she paid all the bills, she sorted all the stuff out, and kept the house going. Really, you know, did all the cooking and cleaning. Really, obviously my dad did stuff like, but they had very defined roles, and it worked really well. And I kind of respect that, you know. She installed really good morals in us, and she was a childminder and stuff when we were very young, so we always had like kids in the house, so we weren't really we interacted with the kids really well, to be fair. The childminder thing did annoy me a little bit though, because obviously they'd play with my toys and sometimes they'd break them, and there was one kid that wasn't very respectful of toys and would I used to cry when he was coming around. Oh, phew! Excuse me. Hay fever, what a wonderful thing. I'm not going to edit that out. You've heard me sneeze. I don't care. Yeah, so I used to get a bit upset when he came around. But my mum's had loads of jobs in her life. Like she's she's worked in a pharmacy, and she's led quite an interesting life actually. Like she tells a great story, a great yarn. She exaggerates because she's Irish, but that's okay. I mean, she tells a story when she worked in a pharmacy when she was a teenager, probably like 18. I think she was 18 or 19, and some guys came in and held her up at gunpoint and were threatening her, and she recognized the guy's voice and was like, "Oh, is that you?" And he was like, "Oh, shut up," like kind of thing. And she says, "I wasn't scared because I knew who it was and he wasn't going to hurt me." And yeah, but like stuff like that's crazy. And like to think that like that my mum's lived through stuff like that in Belfast, when the troubles over there were really bad, is kind of insane. And as even I remember going over there as a kid and it being not as bad, but seeing things, you know what I mean? But she's always kind of like been in the caring profession or in the caring capacity. And sorry, I had to pause to go and blow my nose because I was going to be snuffling otherwise, and that's disgusting. You don't hear that. I'll let you hear me sneeze, but I'm not going to hear me snuffling. Anyway, yeah. So she's always been in the caring profession, and that is like her to a T. As I've said, she's so caring, like again to her detriment, and she was the person you'd go to get round. Like I think there's that whole dynamic, isn't there, with parents. Like I would say to Mum, can I do this, or can I do that, or can I have this? And she'd be like, go and ask your dad. And my dad would just be like, what's your mum say? And I'd be like, she said yes. And my dad knew I was lying half the time. She'd be like, well, I'll go with whatever your mum says. So I'd go back to my mum. It's probably annoying as a parent, to be fair. That's probably like a bit of a cop-out, to be honest. But my dad was quite easygoing, and I think he didn't want to go against her because like he knew that my mum had very strict boundaries with certain things, and he was probably maybe the opposite. Like he was quite a free spirit when he was a kid. Like he got into some trouble, and he maybe he didn't trust his own judgment. I don't know, but he let my mum choose, and my mum was pretty good at doing stuff like that. She was pretty fair. There were sometimes when I was a kid, I'd think to myself, "Oh God, like I don't think that's very fair at all." But you do as a kid, and you hope that you're different if you become a parent yourself. But my mum just. She just oozes love, like from she gives the best hugs, like, and she's only small. She's only like 5'1", and I'm not the tallest guy. I'm like 5'7" and a quarter. The quarter makes a difference, and she just gives the best hugs. Like it's just one of the things that she doesn't do stuff unless she means it, and most things she means, to be honest, especially when it comes to caring. And yeah, I just love it a bit. She cracks me up. She's so hilarious about meaning to, like some examples, like she gets words wrong sometimes, and sometimes she just doesn't get what the hell you're saying. Uh, yeah, her Irishness comes through, and that's not me being like derogatory to Irish people, but they do have a certain way, and they have phrases and stuff that just don't make any sense. Like one of the things that she used to say when I was a kid, when she got really annoyed, was I'll not miss a minute at the wall," like, which kind of makes sense, but it's also an hilarious saying as well. Yeah, and I'll have to do a Stephen Speak Extra on Irish. I'll have to speak to her and write down a lot of the sayings and just regurgitate them over this to you, because some of the things that the Irish people say, are just funny. They have like the most weird sayings. Well, I suppose they're weird to us, but I suppose if you live there, then they're just everyday sayings. But yeah, she'd say stuff, and to be fair, she got ribbed. Like when we used to live at home, me, my dad, and my brother used to just take the piss out of her. So she was probably a bit tortured living in a house with three guys. Yeah, but she brought it on herself a lot of the time. Some of the stuff she used to say and do, and but I think one of the biggest things. I think if you said to me about my mum, what would describe her as a parent, what she gives to me, I think I would say reasonably fair. Reasonably fair with like her punishments and stuff like that. And she was sometimes easy to get around, but she installed amazing values in us, amazing morals. Taught us to be patient. Taught us to, be appreciative. And my dad, obviously, my dad's including this as well. It was a team effort. But my mum was always just the best cook, and she wanted to show us how to cook. She wanted to install stuff like that, so showed us how to sew, and how to cook. And she was always very hands-on. She had this thing, really, and I think she got it from her mum. And I never met my gran, my mum's mum, because she passed away when my mum was only 11, which has probably shaped the way my mum is, to be honest. And I can't even imagine not having a mum. And at some point that will happen, because we all pass away. But to lose your mum at such a young age, one of my friends pretty much had the same thing happen. One of my best mates, and him and my mum have a bit of like an affinity because of that. They both understand what it feels like. I can't comprehend that, and it definitely shaped the way she is. She's empathetic to a fault. Helpful to a fault, and caring to a fault, and it's not necessarily a bad thing most of the time. But again, mum, look after yourself. And if you are like that, look after yourself. You can only give so much. You've got to remember that you've got to retain something for you. But yeah, the biggest thing I remember is is making cakes and just cooking and getting me and my brother involved. She had this thing where if you're in the kitchen, you either help or you get the hell out. And she would throw things at you, like she'd kick you. She'd not like abuse wise, but she'd kick you in the arse and get out of my kitchen. And especially if you're on the hunt, she was making cakes and you were trying to like lick the whisk and stuff like that of the buttercream, and which she would do. She would bring like one whisk in for one for me, one for my brother, like of the double whisk, where she was like whipping ice in or anything like that. And we'd be able to lick the batter, the cake batter, or the sugar cream or buttercream. Yeah, and I remember that really vividly. She was always like making like cupcakes. When we were very young, she was like part-time work and stuff like that. She was at home doing some childcare, as I said, like some babysitting and stuff. And so we were quite lucky in that sense that she was home and she could bake and prepare really, really lovely home-cooked meals. Like my mum is a brilliant cook. And she passed that down, and she was really, really hands on. Like I know most parents like trying to teach their kids how to cook, but she was really hands on with it. Like and trusting as well, because I think that's a big thing. Like, and I want to instill that in my children. That if I'm cooking with them, like they do the thing. I'm not going to say, right, this is how you do it, kids. Whisk, I'm going to do the whisking, but this is what you would do. Like, she would give us the whisk, and if we were sensible, that's she would just say, right, I'm going to let you have this opportunity. Don't fuck it up and don't be an arsehole about it. As soon as you start messing around, you're out of the kitchen. I'm doing something. I'm involving you. Don't be an arse, basically. And my dad was like that as well, like doing gardening stuff, but probably less so because I think I'm kind of like him in that sense that I'm very time critical, and if I've allocated myself half an hour for something, and I think, well, them being involved is going to take longer, I'm like, you know what, not today, mate. And he used to say that to me, like, not today, mate. It'll take too long if you help me. No disrespect to you. I need to crack on. I've got other things to do. And it's hard as a kid to hear that, but I understand as an adult why that is. So he didn't do that at all times when he could. Like, we'd plan it in, and I'm very much like, I'd have to plan it in and take that into consideration, where my mum was a bit more flexible with that. She kind of liked that, like, helpful side. I think the only thing that I didn't really enjoy her teaching me was doing the ironing. I hate ironing to this day. Like, when I moved into the house on my own, when I moved into my first place, I bought an iron and I never used it. I can say that I actually used it, but it wasn't even on my own clothes. It was on a mate's shirt. I ironed his shirt for him. Never used the iron once on my own stuff. And annoyingly, it broke. Probably from lack of use. I don't know. My mates used my iron more than I did. Well, it's not hard as I never used it. Yeah, but my mum, she used to make... my brother's favourite was pavlova, so it's like meringue with cream and fruit on top. And, oh my God, her meringue was amazing. I used to love tray bakes. And I only realised one of the recipes that she and I need to make these at some point, but it might be dangerous for me. But she used to make these mint tray bakes. And every time I go to Ireland, even now, it's been like oh my God, what is this? Oh, what's that minty bit? I need to know this recipe. And I only realised recently that it's literally just mint food colouring in icing. That's all it is. Like, here's me thinking it's some sort of magic recipe. And she told me, and I was like, what? It's like, are you joking? But she's... Yeah. So describe my mum. Excellent cook. Caring. Empathetic to a fault. Short. Short. She's funny without knowing it. She sometimes gets annoyed at us because she's funny, but she's not meaning to be funny, so she's actually being serious, but we take the piss. But anyway, I'm counting that as that. But she's just like the life and soul of the party as well. Like, and I think that's where I got my side of that. She doesn't really need a drink to be fun. If you get her in the right mood, the right mindset, and the right environment, like, she'll be the first up to dance. She'll involve people, you know, and she doesn't mind that sort of stuff. And I'm very much like that. If I'm at a party, even and I don't need to be drinking, and no one's dancing, and someone goes, "Oh, I wish someone was dancing," like whoever's party it is, I'll be like, "Well, I'll go and dance if you want," and I'll just go up and dance on my own, like, just to encourage people. And then when people are dancing, I'm like, my work here is done. And my mum's very much like that. She's always said, like, a wine gum and a swing around the lamppost, and she's anyone's kind of thing, like, cheap night out, you may say. And she's like that, she's a couple of glasses of wine and a brandy, and she's pretty happy. Even though wine isn't that cheap in pubs now. But yeah, she's just so fun to be around. Like, I remember when I lived in my first house before I was with Sarah, she came over to visit, and she peaked a bit too soon. I'm not going to lie to you. We went to a pub and we went to be seeing like a Bon Jovi tribute in a local rock club. And we went to the pub first, which was across the road. And the rock club, very famous in Crewe, it's called the Limelight. It's closed down a while ago now, and it's just such a shame. It was such a brilliant place. And we went to the pub, and she was, bearing in mind, she's out with all my mates, like, so, like, people that are 23, 24 years old, and she's, like, having the best time. Like, how old has she been at the time? She'd been, like, in her 50s at the time, probably. And she's just, like, living it up. She's dancing, rocking out, like, just joining in with the conversations. Embarrassing to me, to be honest, because my mates were talking about some pretty blue subjects about what I was getting up to in my house, and yeah, but she just joins in. She's just up for anything, and considering she can be quite a shy and retiring person, and again, I think this is something that we both kind of relate to, and quite self-reflective and self-critical of. She will then put herself in that limelight as well, and just up for a good time. She just wants to have a good time, and everyone else to be having a good time. And And again, I think that's why I'm like that. And if someone like say the first person to dance, because people are like, "Oh my god, no one's dancing. This is a terrible party," and I'm like, I will dance," and she's the same. But as I say, there's so many stories about my mum that I could tell. I'm probably gonna tell the worst, and she'll probably hate me for this, but I don't care because it happened and it's real and it's funny, and this is something she did. And she's not proud of it. I'm not going to say she's proud of it. She's not proud of it. She shouldn't have done it, and she knew she was being a bit of a bad influence. But and she was going through something at the time, so there's kind of an excuse for it. But obviously, I told the stories about my dad, and this is the story I'm going to tell about my mum. She smoked a joint once when I was living at home. My brother was back from university, and he'd gone out with his mate, and he'd been. My brother obviously didn't have like a drug habit, but he used to smoke the occasional spliff, and as you do when you go to university, I suppose you experiment and stuff like that. I have, hand on heart, never tried drugs. It's just something that's never interested me. But my brother, dabbled in that when he was at uni and at college, and that's fine. He wasn't hurting anyone. But my mum and dad had a bit of a thing from smoking in his bedroom. I don't think they wanted that to like have a bad impression on me, and also it was like their house, their rules kind of thing. And my mum confiscated a couple of his joints, and I remember this massive argument about it. She was like, "Mah," and he was like, "Oh, you bloody smoked it." And she was like, "Yes, but it's not." "Oh, I did it back in the 70s or whatever." And it wasn't probably a bit of a lame argument from my mum, if I'm honest. And I didn't really see the point of him having them confiscated. I just thought, tell him to smoke them outside, and if you catch him in the house, then destroy them or something. That's what I'd have done. But hey, and my mum was going through a bit of shit at work, and she was a bit upset and stuff. And it was like a Saturday night, I think, and my dad was on an early shift the next day. And my dad went to bed and just went, "Keep an eye on your mother," because she'd been threatening to smoke this spliff and my brothers, and apparently it was like skunk. Now I'm not too up on all that sort of stuff, but apparently it was like strong stuff. And my dad was like, "Elizabeth, don't you?" That's what my mum's name, by the way. She's called Elizabeth. I can't believe I've got like 20 minutes into it and I even said what her name is. He says, like, "Liz, don't you smoke that joint." And she was like, "Oh, well, I've done worse in my past and all this." And he was like, "Oh." So he said to me, he was like, he was going to bed and he was like, "Keep an eye on your mother." And I'm like, "What?" Like, so what does she go and do? She at this point, she's had a couple of glasses of wine, a couple of brandies, so she's a bit drunk. And she's like, "I'm going to smoke that spliff." And she went down the garden. And I think she thought she was being sneaky, but she wasn't. And we had a dog at the time called Smudge. He was like a Jack Russell cross. And he went down the garden with her. And I was like, "Mum, please don't smoke that spliff. That's ridiculous. I'm just watching this film. I'm going to go to bed." And Dad told me to watch it. "Can you just go to bed? It would just be easier on everyone." And she was adamant, so she went down the garden. So lit this spliff and puffed away on it for a bit. I don't even think she smoked the whole thing, and it was pretty obvious pretty quickly that it was having some adverse effects on her. Obviously, her being drunk didn't help, and even I knew that was a bad idea. Smoking a joint when you're that drunk. And I think she was drinking her wine or brandy and stuff while she was smoking it, and yeah, she was not in a good way, and that joint combined with like the alcohol. We had quite a long garden as well at this house. It was like about 100 yards long, and we had like a patio area about halfway down. And I went down the garden. I was like, "Mum, can you come to bed?" And she looked out of it, like she was like, "Oh, Stephen, you're gonna have to help me." And I was like, "Oh my god, like what have you done?" So I was literally trying to help her up the garden, but then she was like slapping me away at the same time. And we had like a concrete garage, but it was like pebble dashed, so it was like all this quite rough stone on the side of it. They were quite popular back in the day. You don't really see them that much anymore. Everyone has brick built ones. And she was like literally as if she was like rock climbing up this bloody wall, trying to keep herself upright. And she cut all her arms open, and she was nearly falling over. And I thought, I can't go and wake Dad up. He'll kill me. He'll go mental. Like he'll lose his shit. And she could hardly get into the conservatory. Like she was in a bad way. And then she was like, "Stephen, I feel sick." And I was like, "Well, stay outside then." She was like, no, I'm coming in. I need to get to the kitchen. But she wasn't. I think she thought she was moving like really quickly, and she was not at all. And by this point, I'd locked the dog in the kitchen. We had like this children's gate across the kitchen door because when she was cooking and stuff, she didn't want the dog coming in and out all the time. So she had this children's gate. So I'd locked him in there thinking he'd be safer out of the way because he was getting under her feet. So I came back to her and was like, right, let's get you to bed. She went, no, I'm going to be sick. I need to get to the kitchen. And I was like, oh, Christ. So she wouldn't get out of my way. She'd got to the kitchen door and she was trying to open this bloody child lock children's gate. And the dog's like really happy to see her because dogs, like, you don't see your dog for a minute and you come back and it's happy. That's what the great thing about dogs. And the dog's looking up at her, like excited. She's looking down at the dog trying to open this bloody gate. Excuse me. I'm saying to her, Mum, would you get out of the bloody way? I'm trying to, and she's going, I'm going to be sick. I'm like, get out of the bloody way. She's like, I'm going to be sick. The dog stood there wagging his tail. Next minute, bleh, she throws up, like, all over the dog. Like, he's covered. And the dog just freezes and is like, what the hell? What have I done to deserve that? He turns tail and just goes and gets in his bed and is just, like, frozen. He's, like, gone all stiff for having this sick all over him. And I get the gate open. I'm like, oh, Christ. So I get the gate open. And I think my dad's probably awake at this point because of the kerfuffle. She starts throwing up into the sink. And I'm just like, oh, my God, I can't cope with this. Like, I don't know how old I was at the time. I was probably 15, maybe 16. My brother was like 5.5 years older than me. So I don't know. I can't remember if it was he went to 2 universities. So I was probably between the ages of like 14 and 16 maybe. And so I've got the dog there covered in sick, sat in his bed. And I'm going, right, don't you run around the house. I'm trying to look after my mum. And next minute my dad turns up at the door and he's like, what the bloody hell's going on? And my mum's crying by this point. Oh, I'm so sorry, I smoked that spliff. Oh, no, you're right, I shouldn't have done it. Oh, like, and it sounds terrible, but it was kind of like living it. It's so funny in hindsight. And we had to take the dog outside. Like, I was pissed off because I wanted to go to bed a while ago. My film would finish and I wanted to go to bed, but because Dad had told me to look after her, I thought I'm not going to defy him. And we had to bloody wash the dog off in the garden at about 12:30 at night with like just cold hose him down in the garden, poor little bastard. So he stood there like wet in the garden. My mum's gone to bed at this point. Like, she's thrown up again upstairs. My dad got her changed and, like, into bed, and she's snoring her head off. Oh, excuse me again. Yeah, and she's absolutely snoring her head off, and we're stood in the garden like idiots. We got to clean the house up because there's a bit of sick everywhere where the dog's been running through, and clean the bloody kitchen sink up and washing the bloody dog down. And she was rough the next day as well. And if she hears this, she'll probably go mad for me telling that story, but it's one of the funniest things that's like happened to her. And I recall from my youth, very much like a thing, don't do as I say, don't do as I do as I say kind of thing. Yeah, but it was, and the dog didn't go near her for days. Like, literally would not go near her for a few days. Every time she went, especially if he was in the kitchen and she was trying to get through the little gate, he would just run and jump in his bed. And if she walked past him, he'd be like, oh my God, don't throw up on me, like, and flinch. And she basically had to go to the shop and buy him loads of like really special treats. And basically bribery got him back on her side. Dogs like forget things pretty quickly, don't they? But it was I would say probably for a good week he was nervous of her. Poor little bastard. Oh no, but to sum up, like, my mum's just brilliant. I love her to pieces. And I can't wait to go over to Ireland and see her again. It's the only thing with her living in Ireland. It's not like you're down the road, is it? It's a planned trip to go and see her, and it's a bit of a bummer. But I talk to her regular, and for as much as sometimes we don't get on, I think because sometimes we are a bit similar. I think I've matured a bit. I think my relationship with her is a lot better than it used to be. I used to get quite annoyed at her and snap at her quite a lot, and I'm really trying to get out of that. It's not grown up. It's not an adult thing to do, and it's not a respectful thing to do neither. So I think you've got to have respect for your parents, and thinking back to some of the stuff she's done in my youth, parents make sacrifices you don't even comprehend, I don't think, when you're a kid. and you've got to kind of keep that in mind, I think, as an adult, even when they are bloody annoying, which she can be, like IT passwords. I mean, you've probably been there the same. Like, what's my password for that? I don't know. It's your password. Like, and I have her passwords, and my brother has her passwords saved in our phones because she's so shit at remembering any sort of login. Yeah, but that's a story for another day. Technology and parents. That's a story for another day. That's definitely a separate episode. But look after your mums, look after your dads. They're the best, aren't they? Let's face it. That that they brought you into this world, and put up with a lot of your shit. I think definitely put up with a lot of my shit. So thank you very much for listening. This has been Stephen Speak, and you've been wonderful as always. And take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. You've been listening to Stephen Speak podcast. I'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button.